What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we've got a fun video for you. Today we're going to be going over the worst guns that we've had on Honest Outlaw in 2024. Now, this has actually been a pretty good year for guns, and there weren't really that many shit shows that we had that really stand out in my mind as terrible guns, although we have had a few. So instead of a standard top 10 that we like to do, we're just going to do a top 5. These are not what I would consider the worst guns in the world, they're just the worst guns that we reviewed in 2024. Now, before we get into the video, I just wanted to give you guys a huge thank you for making the channel what it is. 2024 is our biggest year yet. We moved into our new range. We have our range all set up, and we have a whole slew of new things for you in the works for 2025 as soon as Iowa thaws out a little bit. But if you like what's happening now, you're gonna love what's happening in 2025. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for all the patron support, and just thank you for allowing me to review guns for you. And hopefully I give you a little joy, and hopefully I help you out with your firearms purchases, because that's what I'm trying to do. I do want to mention the channel sponsor, which is Brownells. Brownells has been sponsoring the channel for a while now, and we really appreciate them. I've been going to Brownells for everything outdoor that I needed for the last few years, and I really love them. They're an Iowa company. I really like people that work there, and they carry all kinds of stuff that my viewers are going to be interested in. If you want to get anything from cool range bags to swag to other stuff, check out Brownells. All right, with that being said, let's get right into it at number 5. And number 5 is going to be a hard pick for me because it's probably the most disappointing experience that I've had this year. Not quite the worst gun we've had this year, but I had such high hopes for this gun, and I was surprised that it did as poorly as it did, and that is going to be the new CZ P09C Nocturne. Failed.
It did have a fail.
Now, this is a new generation of one of my favorite guns of all time, and it comes with upgraded feature set over the original. However, I do feel like this one is sort of an example of the manufacturing that we can expect post 2020, and with this version, at least the version that I had for review, I have to mention that CZ also sent this to me for review. This one didn't work very well. Now, the previous version, the P09 and the P07, have both been reviewed and featured on my channel multiple times with thousands and thousands of rounds through them. The P07 is actually one of, if not the most reliable gun that I own, so getting its new version and finding out that it had more problems than I've ever had with the old one in just a first shots video was tough for me to swallow. This is a 4-inch double single action pistol that has a polymer frame. It also has a good set of sights on it, a tritium front rear, and we have a dedicated optics mount for the shield RMS. We have new texture, we have a backstrap system, and then it also has a new magazine system that allows you to pinch the mags out if you ever have a malfunction. Another failure to feed, same malfunction over and over again.
That one I can't do the tappy.
Now, I'm not sure what went wrong with this because traditionally double single action pistols are very reliable, but we did experience multiple malfunctions with my wife shooting, and I actually shot 300 rounds for this and didn't experience a malfunction, but my wife experienced a whole bunch. So we took out the gun again, and it had problems again.
Oh.
Now, we haven't got quite to 1,000 rounds, but I would say it's enough for me to formulate an opinion that this isn't as reliable as the previous one was because I never had a malfunction in that gun. I'm not sure what this is attributed to. Maybe it's just poor manufacturing on this particular model. Maybe it's just bad luck on my part, but either way, the P09C did not live up to the reputation of the P07, at least for me. Now, it was a very shootable gun. I like the slide serrations. I like that it comes with all the features, but it lacks the one thing that I cover above all else, and that's reliability. In at number 4, another gun that hurts me a little bit, and that is going to be the Wesson Specialist. Now, the Specialist is a gun that I actually had and used previous to the channel, so I wanted to get another one and featured on the channel with tons of footage, and I thought it would be a fun range day because obviously I like 1911s, and this happens to be kind of a classic 1911 with some modern features. A 5-inch barrel with a rail at the bottom. We have tritium sights, we have some G10 grips on it, and then we have standard capacity 10-round magazines with the single stack design of the 1911. Now, the gun that I bought was pretty affordable. On top of that, it came with a bandolier of magazines that I think had like 15 or 20 in it, and they were all Dan Wesson magazines, so I was super psyched about that. But most of the magazines I actually ran through it didn't really work all that well. All right, so we got our Dan Wesson mag, which for some reason it does not like. And we load it into the gun, and we get no lockback for some reason on some of these mags. Some of these mags are shit. And on top of that, they barely pull out of the gun. And then some other mags, let's find this Wilson here. We had more malfunctions in this than I was ready to accept, to be honest with you. See, this is what I mean right here. This is what it's doing. It's not failing while I'm shooting the gun, but it seems to want to fail every time it gets slung forward. And I wonder if it's just got something to do with the chamber, maybe this chamber sticky. And I can't tap it forward either. Now, add that to the fact that the Dan Wesson Specialist is somewhere between $1,400 and $1,800. You are certainly getting a very beautiful gun, and you are certainly getting a very accurate and shootable gun. But the fact that we had reliability issues with this at that price point is hard for me to deal with. So I would certainly relegate this to more of a range toy than an actual self-defense item, at least this version here. My previous version was reliable, but this one wasn't. And even though I really like the way it looks, I like the way it shoots, it's got to be on the list because of the price and the reliability. In at number 3, we have a gun that is significantly cheaper than the Dan Wesson, but had about the same reliability issues, and that is going to be the Taurus TH9. Now the Taurus TH9 I got for under $200, so a lot of this stuff you can take with a grain of salt because $200 guns are not the most reliable guns to begin with. Honestly, most Tauruses aren't either. You kind of get lucky or you don't. All right, so what we have here, a little bit of a failure. Well, made it worse. Sometimes they run great, sometimes they go 1,000 rounds, 2,000 rounds without a failure, and sometimes they can't go every other round. So it just really depends on what gun you get out of the factory. The reason for that is because when Taurus cuts corners, man, do they cut them. They use the cheapest material that they can use, and they generally use no quality control whatsoever. That's why you can get a gun so cheap, but you also take a lot of risks with reliability and especially long-term durability. Now, we had several malfunctions in the 200 rounds we shot in the first shots of this, but overall the gun was relatively shootable, especially for the price that it is. The double action trigger is really, really bad. It's like 14 pounds, but the single action trigger actually is pretty good. Maybe 3 or 4 pounds on the single action trigger. The grip is okay. It does have a backstrap system and it has pretty decent texture, along with a light rail and then better sights than you actually get on your Glock, which is kind of funny. It has a, I think, 4.5-inch barrel, and it has a 17 round magazine capacity. So in a pinch, it can certainly do the job, but it certainly isn't a long-term hand down to your kid heirloom. It's more of a police evidence locker kind of gun. All right, in at number 2, ooh, this one's gonna hurt a lot of you, but it's not gonna hurt me. And that is going to be the Makarov.
Uh-oh.
I have some limited experience with the Makarov, and I don't want to include all Makarovs on here, although every one of them I've had has sort of had issues. Now, the Makarov is a classic legendary gun from the Ruskies, and it is sort of the Cold War equivalent to the 1911 for the Russian side. It was their sidearm for many years. It's considered to be very reliable, and it has many, many different versions for many different countries and many different calibers. The version that I got, I actually shot with Mr. Guns and Gear. He actually brought one down because I wanted some experience with it so I could put it on some top 5s maybe, and maybe potentially get one of my own. And he owns literally every gun on earth, so I figured why not have him come down and shoot one. He's actually sort of a Makarov aficionado. This was not the top 5 I thought it would be on. In my meager experience, we could barely get the thing to work. It was a miserable experience. Now, he did mention that the ammunition that he brought wasn't really designed for the gun, and there was a lot of other compatibility issues, including just me with Russian guns in general. Basically, every Russian gun that I've shot on the channel has had Russian results, and I'm not really sure at this point why people keep putting these things on a pedestal, but holy shit. The Makarov, in my experience, was not only limited capacity, it was unreliable, it was hard to shoot, I couldn't hit anything past 50 yards with it, the trigger's awful, and honestly, these days, they're more expensive than your average polymer frame Wonder 9. I'll give you an example. The gun I shot, 2 days ago was the Ruger RXM, and it was superior in every single way to the Makarov. So I gotta tell you, between the Makarov and pretty much every other gun, I'm going with every other gun. Even arguably the Taurus TH9, which is why it's at number 3 and the Makarov's at number 2. So I get that you guys are big fans of it. Most of you probably used it in Call of Duty and not in real life. Maybe you guys are out out there using it for concealed carry, and maybe it works well in a pinch, but I think the Makarov's probably better off just used at close range in the gulags, if you know what I mean. At the end of the day, that's my experience. Now, I know it's a legendary gun with legendary reliability, and I probably just got a shitty one, or maybe Mike just brought the wrong ammunition, but either way, my experience is my experience, so here it is. Now, I wanted to do some honorable mentions before I got to number one. First one being the Palmetto State Armory 300 Blackout. Some more. Ooh. Now we have a failure to go in the chamber. Oh, now it's stuck. Now, the reason why it's not on the list is because I kind of sabotaged it itself. Not only did I put a folding stock adapter on it, which I hear can cause malfunctions, although I haven't experienced that myself, but the real thing that I did was use mostly subsonic ammo when it literally says on the website that it can only run subsonic ammo with a suppressor. We had a lot of malfunctions in the first shots, but honestly, it's not really the gun's fault. Considering the price, I think it doesn't deserve to be on this list, but I want to give it an honorable mention because with subsonic ammo, it was a dumpster fire. But with supersonic ammo, it runs phenomenal. I also wanted to mention the SIG Fuse. The SIG Fuse was a gun I just wasn't excited about. To be honest, we got it for first shots and I didn't even shoot her first shots with it. I shot a couple mags on it and I was like, whatever. It's like a big baby. It's like a baby grip that's too big of a gun to carry. I don't understand why I would want that. Lorraine liked it.
Hey, didn't malfunction.
But she experienced several malfunctions with it.
Oh, it malfunctioned.
And then immediately put it in the trade pile, and that gun is already gone. Honestly, the SIG Fuse was just so forgettable, slightly unreliable, and I just don't care about it. Now, the number one honorable mention that definitely could be on this list, but I didn't even make a full video, it was so unreliable, was the SIG 320 Legion 4-inch with the threaded barrel. Now, we tried to shoot that gun when I had ear problems last year. I blew my eardrums out, so for a while I could only shoot suppressed guns. So we were looking for any threaded barrel gun we could get right out of the factory. As soon as I turned a suppressor on it, it went from semi-auto to single shot. I mean, talk about California compliant. I was really underwhelmed, considering the only SIG 320 I've ever really liked is the Legion series. I liked the Legion, and then I also liked the Legion Comp. Don't tell anybody, but I did like those guns. But the Legion 4-inch, even when we changed the recoil spring, had tons of problems. I don't know if it was the weight, I don't know if it was the back pressure, even with sub or supersonic ammo, was just a disaster. So overall, pretty classic day with the SIG 320. That being said, let's get right into it with number one, and that is going to be my least favorite gun of the year by far, the Girsan Witness 2311. Now, the Girsan Witness was sent to me by Girsan, and I don't really feel bad about saying this because they made that gun, they know what they did. They came out with a double stack 1911 that was affordable for everybody and that nobody wanted. I actually shot this gun for the first time at TriggerCon in Wichita last year, and I shot it with the Girsan guys, and the gun at the booth had tons of malfunctions and had tons of trigger follow. And I was like, you guys worked on the trigger and made it unreliable, so hopefully you guys have a more reliable version and maybe I could do a review of it. So they sent it to me, and it wasn't a more reliable version. It just had different reliability problems. And feel free to watch the first shots on it, but it was probably the least reliable gun that we've had all year. Add to the fact that it was definitely cheap for a 2011, but if you, again, look at the market and you find out, like, the PSA Dagger's $300, the RXM is $400, the P10C and F are $350, you can get a Canic for $450. All those guns can shoot faster, more accurately, and are way more reliable than the Girsan 2311. Now, the only reason you buy a 2011 is because it has a very light, very crisp trigger, and they shoot very quickly with a very low recoil impulse, and Girsan managed to achieve none of that. So basically, it's $700 completely down the drain because a stock Glock can outshoot one, and then what's the point of going to the 2011 in the first place? Overall, I think it was a good idea, executed extremely poorly. I would say it's certainly the worst gun of 2024, but there was a lot of good guns in 2024 as well, and on Sunday, I will be hooking you up with the 10 best guns of 2024. So if you got pissed about this, don't worry about it, because it's still the golden age of firearms. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out our Oklahoma shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.